What's up, Taiwan? I'm Eric Gao, bringing you the news this evening from Taipei. U.S. President Donald Trump seems sure that China won't attack Taiwan while he's in office. That's what he said in a new interview. This comes after Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping reportedly avoided the topic of Taiwan during their meeting in South Korea last week. Leslie Liao has more.
China will never do anything against Taiwan while I'm president, and if they do, they know what the consequences are. That's essentially what U.S. President Donald Trump told reporters in an interview with CBS shortly after his meeting with Chinese leader Xi Jinping in South Korea last week. Have a listen.
They understand what's going to happen, and he has openly said, and his people have openly said at meetings, we would never do anything while President Trump is president, because they know the consequences.
Trump's comment comes after he said that Taiwan did not come up in his meeting with Xi Jinping, something Chinese press releases on the meeting also say. Their meeting on the sidelines of the APEC summit last week was meant to ease trade tensions between the two sides, but there was speculation that Taiwan could come up in the talks, as China claims Taiwan as its territory, and some expected Beijing might use the trade negotiations to further that claim, especially since the U.S. is Taiwan's biggest backer and defense supplier. This isn't anything new. The U.S. has long maintained strategic ambiguity on the topic of Taiwan, often refusing to commit solidly to defending the country if China ever attacked. Trump has followed suit, only ever saying that Xi Jinping has said that China would not invade Taiwan while he's in office. However, the mention of consequences is relatively new. But speaking at a geopolitics forum in Taipei on Monday, Taiwan's former representative to the U.S. says Taiwan should not get complacent.
但是会不会为了彼此双方的一个可长可久的一个竞赛呢，进入一个新冷和 new cold peace 可能？那么在现在的这个样子的主客观局势里面呢，我们不可以太多的，我个人认为不可以太多的自我设限。 尤其在新的格局里面呢，台湾应该出声。
So Stanley Gao suggesting there that China-U.S. trade tensions could take a long time to resolve, but that Taiwan has an opportunity to be more assertive despite these pressures. But Trump has said that chip companies are leaving Taiwan for the U.S., another pressure Taiwan faces, all while Washington and Taipei continue their own trade negotiations. So Taiwan has a tight balancing act to play. Alex Tun and Leslie Liao for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's foreign ministry has thanked Washington for its consistent Taiwan policy, especially as China continues to undermine regional peace and stability. Taiwan is doing all it can to speed up deliveries of U.S. arms. That's according to Defense Minister Wellington Koo, who says the U.S. side has also set up a special office for certain weapon orders.
主要的武器装备的案项大概就25案嘛，那有些在交易的期程当中，有一些都有提前交易的状况。那这3个案项的部分，我想我们也会加速来进行这个履约的督导。那美方也成立专案办公室。
Koo was speaking to the legislature about delayed deliveries of F-16V fighter jets, glide bombs, and torpedoes. The jets alone cost more than $8 billion and were originally scheduled for delivery by the end of next year. The ministry says the manufacturer is currently running the assembly line 20 hours a day to overcome delays. Koo also gave updates on another delayed project, Taiwan's domestically made submarine, the Hylo, saying the Defense Ministry will fine the shipbuilder for failing to meet deadlines.
这个技法，它是一个督促其尽最大的努力来完成合约的一个手段，所以技法本身并不是目的。我想建造完成才是我们最大的一个期待。
The Hylo was originally meant to be delivered in November, but it's only finished part of its testing. For more on what effects delays in U.S. weapons deliveries could have, our reporter Larry Isiano spoke with defense expert Yang Taiyuan from the Secure Taiwan Associate Corporation.
Can you elaborate a little bit on why you think that these delays are happening and what their origin is?
我觉得第一个可能就是美国的，可能它现在军工生产很大一块可能是专注在支援乌克兰、支援以色列，也就所以当然对我们这种目前来讲面临危机可能不是那么大的国家，它可能交际的速度就没有那么快。那第二个， 我在想，是不是相对于美国最近就因为它相关稀土或者晶片的问题，现在最大一个讨论问题是说，如果你说你交机延迟，哦，那可能是慢交了几件，那可能大家都还能接受。现在是说，正常来讲你应该要交了多少，可是你到现在一架都没有，可能就是国人很大一个疑问，可能是存在这个部分。
Do you think the decision to seek compensation could negatively affect U.S.-Taiwan relations?
那按照过往的经验来讲，就是我们向美国如果提出相关的它的违约赔偿要求等等，基本上大概我们能够达到目标的机会很小。那我在想，它是不是在某些合作方面可能会给我们提供一些便利，作为相对的一个变相的一个赔偿？我觉得这方面当然可以去考虑，而不是直接去考虑说，哎，美国因为延迟的，所以他要赔多少钱给我们？这可能现实面可能是比较不现实的。
Can you explain what the backlog is in total and what it means? Are these weapons that Taiwan has paid for but has not received yet? Or are these weapons that have been agreed upon but payment and delivery has not happened yet?
我觉得这些210亿可能是从过去到现在累加起来的一个数量。那也就是说，相对的，其实美国收到钱以后，它可能当然这里边它没有按时生产、按时交付给我们。但其实这里边可能我们要去思考一个问题，也就是说，其实延迟以后，可能我们面临的是美国可能会因为物价、人工或者它相关的像稀土取得成本变高以后，那美国会不会因为超过我们合约规定的一定的比例的价金以后，美国会不会要求我们重新谈判，再调整相关售价？可能这是我们要去思考的，而不是说我们现在只单纯是说，哎，我们付了那么多钱。
That was defense expert Yang Taiyuan on arms transfer delays and what steps Taiwan could take next. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is in South Korea on the latest leg of a tour aimed at reinforcing America's focus on a delicate region. From North Korea to Chinese activity around Taiwan and the South China Sea, there's plenty for the U.S. to be watching closely. But it's not the only country taking action in Asia. John Van Triest has this update.
U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth arrives in South Korea. It's the latest leg in a wider tour of Asia aimed at reinforcing U.S. security commitments in the region. Over 2 days, he'll meet with South Korea's defense minister and visit the demilitarized zone, the area separating South and North Korea. Washington and Seoul are concerned about the North, but the U.S. also has its eye on China, in particular, Beijing's threats against Taiwan and its push to assert its claims in the South China Sea, ignoring an international court ruling that's rejected them. The U.S. also hopes to convince Seoul to continue to garrison U.S. troops on Korean soil, ready to intervene if a conflict breaks out. The South China Sea has been a particular focus of Hegseth's tour so far. Taiwan, Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia, and Brunei all claim parts of the sea. But China has used its Coast Guard to back up its claims, sometimes forcefully. And so, the U.S. has been getting closer to some of the counter-claimants, like Vietnam, where on Sunday, Hegseth had this to say.
The Trump administration supports a strong and independent Vietnam as a mutually beneficial partner. So we want to expand our partnership together and work to advance our shared interests.
With China in the background, the U.S. is starting to supply Vietnam with military hardware, and Vietnam hopes more will come, easing a reliance on Russia for arms.
The U.S. Secretary of War's visit to Vietnam holds significant importance, coinciding with the 30th anniversary of diplomatic relations and reinforcing the comprehensive strategic partnership for peace, cooperation, and sustainable development, as well as deepening bilateral defense ties between the two countries.
But the United States isn't the only country with an eye on China and the Indo-Pacific. Canada's defense minister is in the region too. He's just signed a pact with the Philippines to boost defense cooperation Sunday. Under the pact, the two countries' troops will be able to train on each other's soil. It's the first agreement of its kind Canada signed with a partner in the region. And it further boosts Canada's long support for the Philippines' position against Chinese claims in the South China Sea, as well as Canadian support for a rules-based international order.
that peace is built on rules, not recklessness, and that stability grows from cooperation, not confrontation. The Philippines has shown true leadership in upholding international law and in seeking the peaceful resolution of disputes. And for that, you have Canada's greatest and deepest respect.
This is the 5th such pact the Philippines has signed, and its defense minister is pleased with the outcome.
This agreement converges all these interests into one of the most important projections of trust and confidence between nations, that our armed forces and defense establishments can converge, can work together, not only bilaterally, but with other like-minded partners to preserve and enforce peace and stability.
Faced with an increasingly assertive China just off its coast, Manila wants more such pacts, specifically with France and the UK. It was only Saturday that ASEAN defense chiefs and partners like the US and China issued a joint statement calling for collaboration for peace in the region. But US and Canadian moves suggest the political fault lines under the Asia-Pacific region aren't going away anytime soon. Andy Xue and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
In an interview on Fox News Sunday, the U.S. Treasury Secretary signaled potential new tariffs on China if it carries out threats to restrict rare earth exports.
The rare earth magnets, the Chinese have cornered the market, and unfortunately, at times, they proved to be unreliable partners.
Besant said the U.S. has the means to counter China's control over rare earths, the critical materials that are used in many modern devices. He had earlier told the Financial Times that the U.S. could secure alternative supplies within 2 years. His comments come just days after Trump and Xi agreed in South Korea not to escalate their trade war. Taiwan is moving toward sharing its high-tech manufacturing know-how as leverage in its trade talks with the U.S. That's according to Taiwan's envoy to APEC, who met with American officials on the sidelines of last week's conference.
领袖代表就是财政部长 Vincent， 我们有了一个比较广泛范围的沟通他对我们的状况他也很有兴趣。另外，我也跟他特别提到，台湾你美国制造业要重视这个制造业，台湾的制造业是有很多的强项。
Ling spoke at the presidential office on Monday about his trip to the APEC summit in South Korea. Taiwan and the U.S. are engaged in ongoing trade talks to lower American tariffs on Taiwanese goods. U.S. President Trump has slapped a 20% tariff on Taiwan on top of existing levies. Taipei has repeatedly said that it has proposed sharing its high-tech manufacturing knowledge with the U.S. to gain favor with Washington. That plan seems to be moving along, with talks beginning to focus more on the fine details.
我们各种资源、土地、水电，还有人才培育。 这些议题我们都谈到了，税的问题、签证的问题都谈到了。这些问题我们希望美方能够协助的，包括地方政府跟联邦政府，他们都觉得非常合理。
Trade talks between Washington and Taipei are ongoing, and the two sides have yet to reach a final agreement. Taiwan's top badminton pair have secured gold at the 2025 Hylo Open in Germany over the weekend. Ranked 21st in the world, the men's doubles team, Wang Qiling and Cho Xiangjie, defeated Indonesia's duo in the final. Wang and Cho have been playing together since after the 2024 Paris Olympics. They also claimed the men's double title at the Yonex Taipei Open this May. And thanks again for joining us on What's Up Taiwan this evening. For more of our stories, visit our website or follow us on social media. Before we go, we're traveling to a city in southern France that celebrates the Day of the Dead. Barceloneta has been described as the most Mexican town in Europe. I'm Eric Gao. Take care. We'll see you next time.